Alright, peace. Shalom. First, I want to give all praises, glory, honor, and thanksgiving to Yahweh Bahasham HaMashiach Yahushai. Alright, peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Alright, what you see on the screen here, came across some information, doing some research online. Salak, excuse me, regarding 10 tribes, the lost tribes of Israel. Alright. So I'm gonna just read through some of it and just give you an idea of what took place with the 10 tribes. You know, a remnant of the 10 tribes, because you know, Israel scattered all over. You know, they had different migration periods. You know what I'm saying? So, excuse me. This is just one of the migrations that that took place, which I'm about to show you. Alright, so what you're looking at here is a map of Africa. Okay, and this particular migration took place around the collapse of the Assyrian captivity. The Assyrian Empire. It says at the bottom of the map, the Great Migration of refugees from the collapsing Assyrian Empire, 605 BC, according to Yoruba tradition. Okay, so this is one of the migrations that took place after the Assyrian captivity. All right. So right here it says, it is of course only natural that the outlying colonies in China and India and even in the Sahara should have been at one time or another identified as remnants of the lost 10 tribes. Alright, so because that's what they were. Alright, it's from the Jewish Encyclopedia Talmud Zweffel, edited by Isidore Singer Cyrus, Adler, page 250. Alright, it says, according to the Yoruba history and the research of Dirk Lang, many of the Israelites under Assyrian control left Assyria and the Near East region to migrate to West Africa in 605 BC. Okay. So the Great Migration of refugees from the collapsing Assyrian Empire, 605 BC, according to the Yoruba tradition. What caused the Assyrian Empire to collapse, which in turn caused a migration of Israelite refugees? It says the Babylonian conquest of the Assyrian Empire. Okay, so that's what caused the Israelites to flee. Alright. It says, at the same time of the great migration of Israelite refugees from Assyria into West Africa, dated at 605 BC, the Battle of Carchemish was occurring. Okay, and here's just another map where the Jews, not Jews, but the Northern Kingdom was resettled to or deported. Here, these yellow areas along the rivers of the Euphrates rivers. Alright, it says in 605 BC, Battle of Carchemish, Crown Prince Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon defeats the army of Necho II of Egypt, securing the Babylonian conquest of Assyria. Okay, so basically it's showing you after the Assyrians put the Northern Kingdom into captivity, then from there the Babylonians put them in captivity. Alright, and as a result of that, some of them fled into Africa. Alright, in other parts of the world, through the four corners, like the scriptures tell you. Alright, let me get a precept real quick. Jeremiah 50. says, excuse me, Jeremiah 50 verse 17, Israel is a scattered sheep. The lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria hath devoured him. You see? Because first it was the Assyrians that put him in captivity. Alright? That's why it says, first the king of Assyria hath devoured him. Then it says, and last is Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. So that right there is implying the subsequent or the sequence or the order of events that took place with the Israelites, being scattered. So it says 605 BC, Battle of Carchemish, Crown Prince of Nebuchadnezzar, King of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon defeats the army of NEGRO the second of Egypt. Securing the Babylonian conquest of Assyria, the Babylonians pursued the Egyptians through Syria and Palestine, 7th century BC. This is just a dialogue box from Wikipedia, I think. Yeah, Wikipedia. Alright. So the Battle of Carchemish was fought about 605 BC between the allied armies of Egypt and Assyria against the armies of Babylonia, the Medes, Persians, and Scythians. The Egyptians met the full might of the Babylonian and Median army led by Nebuchadnezzar II at Carchemish, where the combined Egyptian and Assyrian forces were destroyed. Assyria ceased to exist as an independent power, and Egypt retreated and was no longer a significant force in the ancient Near East. Babylonia reached its economic peak after 605 BC, Battle of Carchemish, Wikipedia. So that's what we're reading. That's what I'm reading from. Something from Wikipedia right there. Alright. It says, after the defeat of the Egypto-Assyrian forces at Carchemish in Syria in 605 BC, numerous deportees followed the fleeing Egypto-Assyrian troops to the Nile Valley before continuing their migration to sub-Saharan Africa. Deer Lane. Alright. So right here is just the map showing you the route they took to go into Africa. Alright, after the collapse of the Assyrian Empire. Okay. And here you got, well, here this is the I guess where the tribes fled into, according to Yoruba traditions. Alright, here in this pinkish red color, that's where they went. And here you got the name of Ephraim right around here, where Nigeria is. Okay, so it's like these camps with these tribe signs, man. I don't know what they getting. The Puerto Ricans is Israel. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we know Africa is the majority a dark nation, a dark continent. So it only makes sense that since these 10 tribes, a remnant of the 10 tribes fled into Africa, they would, and when they fled into Africa, they would be among other dark Hamitic people. You know what I'm saying? So it would only make sense that they would also be dark, or what you call black. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same argument when brothers bring up the fact that Yahweh Shai, when his mother and Joseph fled into Egypt, fleeing from Herod, you know what I'm saying, they say he was among dark people, and so he would have to be a black man. Or the same when you present that same reasoning and logic with this situation, it applies, because you have dark Hamitic people in Africa. So it makes sense to me that the 10 tribes would be black people. It's just my reasoning and logic behind it. It says the Battle of Carchemish was indeed a prime reason for Israelites to escape Assyrian captivity and the subsequent Babylonian captivity. So you see, excuse me, it came one after the other. First it was Assyria, and then Babylon, the Babylonians. Alright? It says many of the Israelites who were already removed from the land of Israel by the Assyrians while adopting the practice of paganism also brought with them those same Assyrian pagan customs, culture, and religious practices into West Africa. As a result, we can find many similarities between the peoples of West Africa and the Israelites of the Near East, who were called Scythians, alright, among many other names. And it says, an artifact known as the Behistun rock will help us to better understand the similarities between the West African migration of Assyrian refugees and the Israelites of the Near East. So I ain't really gonna get into the Behistun rock, but I'm gonna just touch on it a little bit. Read this right here, and I just wanted to point out something here. Is you got these are the 10 tribes right here, the leaders of the 10 tribes, what you see right now, and they got their hands tied behind their back like they're being arrested. So this is just like a stone that is carved out in, I think, some part of Persia, which is modern day Iran. It says the Behistun inscription, also Bistan or Bisatan, Persian, Old Persian, Bagastana, meaning the place of God, is a multilingual inscription in large rock relief on a cliff at Mount Behistun in the Kermanshah province of Iran, near the city of Kermanshah in western Iran. It was crucial to the decipherment of cuneiform script, the Behistun inscription. So like the scriptures say, the earth helped the woman. Let me get that real quick. See, that's in Revelation, I think, chapter 12. Right, Revelation 12 verse 16 says, start at 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as of a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. That's talking about the lies, the deception that has been pushed out by the devil. Alright, our enemies. It says, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So the earth helped the woman, meaning all these different artifacts being discovered by archaeologists, and just different places where they've dug up, remains of things that Israelites have used in the past, and different places that they lived. So basically they've unearthed these things and discovered that all of these things have something to do with the Israelites, the lost tribes, so-called lost tribes of Israel. So And this stone right here, this Behistun rock, is just one of them. Okay. So, and what I wanted to point out is this cone hat right here. You know, the one at the end has a cone hat. So this is one of the things that they were practicing in Assyria. That was one of the customs that they participated in during that time. So when they fled into West Africa, or east and west parts of Africa, they took those customs with them. So let's get into that. Alright. It says here, the Israelites had been identified as Beth Kumri, Omri, Gomri since before the Assyrian Tiglath-Pileser, and until at least the time of the Persian king Darius, as early as 840 BC. The Israelites can be found on the Moabite Mesha stele, referred to as the house of Omri, Kumri. This same name would also be used by the Assyrian oppressor in their own recorded references to the northern kingdom of Israel. So the Mesha stele is the longest Iron Age inscription ever found in the region, constitutes the major evidence for the Moabite language, and is a cornerstone of Semitic epigraphy and Palestinian history. The stele, whose story parallels with some differences, an episode in the Bible's books of Kings, provides invaluable information on the Moabite language and the political relationship between Moab and Israel at one moment in the 9th century BC. It is the most extensive inscription ever recovered that refers to the kingdom of Israel, the house of Omri. So this is just a stone here. But scroll down, get to the point. So you see here this photo of Israelites being taken into captivity. You notice their hats too. You know what I'm saying? And they got on fringes, so you know these guys talking about you ain't supposed to be wearing fringes. You know they going off, man. It says the Assyrian exile amassed the portion of Israelites from the northern kingdom of Israel to Assyria. An Assyrian policy of deportation of captive peoples is first attested in the 9th century BC, but only in the mid-8th century. Under Tiglath-Pileser III was there a two-way exchange of populations designed to prevent rebellion of conquered nations. The first recorded exile of Israelites from their land took place in 732 BC after Pekah, king of the northern kingdom of Israel, joined the Arameans in a rebellion against Assyria. Tiglath-Pileser conquered the bulk of the kingdom of Israel, including Galilee and Gilead. 2 Kings 15 verse 29. Archaeological evidence of destruction is widespread at northern sites such as Hazor and Megiddo, while Assyrian inscriptions list exiled captives. I want to get into the customs that, you know, they took with them when they fled into Africa, because that's going to seal the deal right there. That's going to show you right there that the people that's in Africa now are descendants of those, of the remnant of the 10 tribes that fled into Africa after this Assyrian captivity, you know, after the battle of Carchemish in 605 BC. Alright. It says here, if we also look at the records of the following Assyrian campaigns of Shalmaneser III against Israel, we will also find the Israelites referred to as the house sons of Kumri or Omri, Bit Kumri / Omri. These records are found on an artifact called the Black Obelisk. The Black Obelisk depicts King Jehu of Israel bowing down to the Assyrian Shalmaneser, and the translation of the text refers to the Israelite king as the son of Omri or Bit Humriah. Alright, this is the Black Obelisk right here. And you see how King Jehu was bowing down, right? Now I want you to notice what is on his head, but I think it might be a better picture. Yeah, it's going to be a better picture, but let me read this real quick. It says, the mention of 9 of the kings of Israel and Judah in the Assyrian tablets is important, not only because it verifies the historical reliability of our biblical documents for this period, which would surely be under greater attack by the critics were it not for the Assyrian records, but also because it places Israel and Judah on the largest stage of international politics. Israelite Kings in Assyrian Inscriptions by Brian G. Wood, PhD. So you see here King Jehu bowing down, right? Notice the hat he has on his head. It's almost like a Scully, like a Smurf hat. You know what I'm saying? So this right there was one of the customs that they took into West Africa. Alright. Which I'm gonna continue on and show you. Alright. One of the first Assyrian inscriptions to be deciphered was on the Black Obelisk, which bears a picture of tribute sent by a king named as Jehu, son of Omri, one of the kings of Israel. So you see, there's a better picture of him bowing down. And they got these caps on their head. That's almost like a Smurf, Tribute of King Jehu to Shalmaneser III. So yeah, that's what we bowing down before. Okay. You see, notice they caps on their head. And they got fringes. Alright. More caps and fringes. It says, if indeed the Scythian Shaka, Sakay, who are also known as Kumri, Gimri, on account of the Israelite king Omri, were in fact nomadic Israelites from the Assyrian captivity, it then confirms the traditional history of the Yoruba and other West African peoples who relate to the Near East Assyrian captivity. When we return to the traditional history of the Yoruba people, as documented here by Professor Dirk Lang, we now have evidence that the great migration of the refugees fleeing from the collapsing Assyrian Empire during the Battle of Carchemish around 605 BC was actually the migration of the Israelites who had become part of the Assyrian Empire and were known as Bet Kumri / Scythians. Alright. Continuing on, it says the basis of comparative studies between the dynastic tradition of the Yoruba and ancient Near Eastern history. The present article argues that Yoruba traditions of provenance claiming immigration from the Near East are basically correct. According to Yoruba tradition, the ancestral Yoruba saw the Assyrian conquest of the Israelite kingdom from the 9th and the 8th centuries BC from the perspective of the Israelites. After the fall of Samaria in 722 BC, they were deported to eastern Syria and adopted the ruling Assyrian kings as their own. Origin of the Yoruba and the Lost Tribes of Israel by D.R. Klein. Says the Israelites who made part of the Assyrian army that was allied with the Egyptians fled the Near East region territories of Assyrian control into Egypt. From Egypt, these Israelites split into different branches that then traveled into West and East Africa, leaving colonies all along their routes. Alright, and this is just a map of their routes, the routes they took. Alright. However, despite the historical evidence that we have already reviewed so far regarding the kinship between the ancient Israelites, the Scythians, and the West African peoples, we still need more evidence to solidify the connection between the aforementioned people groups. If indeed the Yoruba and other West African groups were actually Hebrew Israelite immigrant to the African continent from ancient Assyria, we should expect to find some Hebrew and Assyrian cultural elements among the West African and Oyo Yoruba people. Moreover, all these elements should also be related to our initial discussion of the Israelite Scythian peoples of the Black Sea region, as well as the Israelites within the Thracian area of Persian Empire, who Daniel the prophet referred to in the biblical record here in Daniel chapter 7 verse 9. Let's begin by reviewing some of the evidence of the Hebrew and Assyrian cultural influence found amongst the West African people, particularly the Oyo Yoruba. Again, it must be mentioned that Battle of Carchemish 605 BC between Assyria and Egypt versus Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar II, because that was the beginning of their migration. And remember them caps that I showed you too, because that's going to be a custom that is going to identify who they are. Nebuchadnezzar II was a king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire who reigned 605 BC to 562 BC. Both the construction of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the destruction of Jerusalem's temple are ascribed to him. Because I think around 586 BC, Jerusalem was destroyed. The Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed. Says it's because of King Nebuchadnezzar's conquest and pursuit of the Assyrians during the Battle of Carchemish 605 BC that caused the Israelite, Scythian, and Assyrian refugees to flee into East and West Africa via Egypt. Alright, so there's just maps showing you that, So just as a time marker and point of reference, let's remember that scholars have dated Daniel's life from 621 BC to 533 BC, and his captivity in Babylon beginning in 605 BC at age 16. The Babylonian captivity beginning in 605 BC resulted in Nebuchadnezzar's victory in the Battle of Carchemish, which resulted in the subsequent conquest of the kingdom of Judah when Daniel was 16. At the same time, during the Babylonian captivity, many of the Israelites of the northern kingdom of Israel, who had already become a part of the Assyrian Empire 721 BC, as well as some of the inhabitants of southern the kingdom of Judah, fled Babylonian captivity in the African continent by way of Egypt. Okay, so like it said in Jeremiah 50 and 17, first the king of Assyria, alright, let me get it real quick again. Right, Israel is a scattered sheep, the lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria had devoured him, and last this Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had broken his bones. You see? So that's what happened. He fled into Africa. But not all of them, they went different directions. Alright, so it says obviously these Israelite would have brought many different customs with them in West Africa. We notice many men wearing a particular headdress. The Oso-Oke hat, now known in the Yoruba language as a fila, is a traditional hat of the Yoruba people. Okay, so you see this hat that this brother got on. These two men right here. Now that was exactly just like what Jehu, king of Israel, had on when he was bowing down before Shalmaneser, okay, king of Assyria. And they all had on something similar to that. Let me go up a little more. Okay, see these little caps they got on their head? This was them, the Assyrian captivity. So when they went into West Africa, they took that custom with them. But you could see here by these two men. Okay, they rocking something similar. It says an Aso-Oke hat, pronounced Ashoke, a type of soft fez, is a traditional Yoruba hat that is made of hand-woven African fabric. See Ashoke fabric, cotton, velvet, or damask. In the Yoruba language, this hat is called a fila. Although these hats originated in Nigeria, they are worn by many men of African descent. Ashoke hat, Wikipedia. See? It's like that Smurf hat, man. So from the Assyrian captivity, where you had Israelites wearing something like this, now you got these West African men right here wearing something similar, man. So this is the custom that they took with them when they fled into Africa. Okay, you see this right here? It says this same Nigerian hat can be seen worn by the ancient Israelites, as depicted on the Assyrian black obelisk of Shalmaneser II. King Jehu is shown wearing a hat very similar, if not identical, to the Ashoke hat of Nigeria. You see? King Jehu, man, wearing something similar. And you got on them fringes. You see the fringes back here, man? Come on, man. Talking about no, don't wear fringes. Check this out. This is something serious right here. This says Omni 115. The people of Zarahemla came out from Jerusalem. It says an ancient American's stocking cap. Okay. Compare the stocking cap and beard of the man of ancient Middle America. Okay. So before Columbus, they was wearing this here in America. It says, above with the stocking cap of King Jehu of ancient Israel. Page 318. So they similar, man. You know, Jake back in the 90s was rocking something like this. Here, look at this right here. You know, Tupac back in the 90s was rocking the beanie hats, man. Okay? See, ain't nothing new under the sun, man. See, the spirit has us doing the same thing because we the same people. You know? You know? Kato, rest in peace, man. That's a showcase right there Pac got on his head, man. You know? It says, continuing on, it says above with the, so let me say, read and start over. It says, an ancient American stocking cap. Compare the stocking cap and beard of the man of ancient Middle America above with the stocking cap of King Jehu of ancient Israel. This Olmec piece, see, this is an Olmec right here. Okay, because the Olmecs are descendants of the 10 tribes. Okay, so they was doing the same thing that King Jehu was doing, along with the other ancient Israelites from Assyria. It says this Olmec piece, dating about the time of Hamashiach, is now in the National Museum, Mexico City. It was uncovered by Matthew W. Sterling in 1939-1940. Milton Hunter and Thomas Ferguson, Ancient America and the Book of Mormon. Alright? So yeah, man, I mean, you see, we doing the same thing to this day. We was doing it in the 90s, man. You know, rocking the beanie ties. You know, I remember seeing Jake wearing these, man, when I was a kid back in the 90s, and they had like the Malcolm X on it. That was back, I think, I can't remember when that movie came out with Denzel, and Spike Lee directed it. But you know, Jake was going in. He was going hard when that movie came out, and they was rocking the beanie hats like this with the Malcolm X on it. You know? But yeah. So yeah, like I said, the spirit has us doing the same thing because we the same people. You know? And that's why history repeats itself. Because the spirit has us doing the same thing. The Most High is behind everything, man. That's why we do the same things. Alright, it says, the Anag people of Nigeria wearing their traditional garments and hat. Compare the hat to the stocking cap above and the Israelite headgear depicted on the Assyrian black obelisk below. Alright. So you see it's similar, man. It ain't nothing new. Alright. So the traditional hat of the Yoruba and Igbo people seems to have clear origins with the ancient Israelites under Assyrian rulership. Both Yoruba and Igbos are descendants of the Israelite Qumri Scythians that fled into West Africa during the collapse of the Assyrian Empire 605 BC and brought with them many of their ancient customs, the traditional hat being one of them. Alright, but I'm gonna cut it off here because you know it's gonna be real long, you know. But yeah, I want to just say peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, man, and continue to study, do research, you know, and edify brothers and sisters out there looking for the truth, you know. With that, I want to say all praises, glory, honor, and thanksgiving to Yahweh Bahashem HaMashiach Yahushua. Shalom.